Good evening. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock, and we want to welcome everyone to the public hearing on behalf of the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. You'll hear the department referred to today, sometimes as ADEM and sometimes as the department. My name is James Thrash, and I'm the designated hearing officer for the purposes of this hearing. The role of the hearing officer is limited to ensuring an orderly hearing so that an accurate record of this hearing may be developed for the department's evaluation. I do not make any decisions regarding the proceedings, regarding the proposed permit or the permit actions. On behalf of the department, we appreciate your participation in tonight's hearing for the following proposed permit action for Alabama Power Company's James M. Barry Electrical Generation Plant, Ash Pond and Gypsum Pond, located near 15,300 Highway 43 North in Bucks, Alabama, zip code 36512. The proposed initial issuance of a coal combustion residual or CCR permit number 4935 to close the Plant Barry Ash Pond and to operate the Plant Barry Gypsum Pond. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to present oral testimony on the proposed permit action. In addition to oral testimony, the department will also consider all written comments submitted before the close of the public comment period. The department has requested your comments, and we appreciate you taking the time to make them known to us. On February 19th, 2021, notice of the date, time, place, and purpose of this hearing was posted on the department's website and published in the Mobile Press Register. In addition, the department sent notice of the hearing by email to individuals and organizations who had previously requested advance notice of the permit proceedings. A copy of the notice and the email distribution list will be entered into the record of these proceedings. Copies of the public notice, permit application, preliminary determination, and draft permit have been made available for inspection by the public at the offices of the department at 1400 Coliseum Boulevard in Montgomery, as well as on the department's website. This hearing is open to the public, and anyone wishing to present oral testimony or submit a written statement may do so. Lengthy statements or those containing considerable technical or other complex data should be submitted in writing. Summaries of such statements may be presented orally. All testimony and written comments should be as factual as possible and should address the subject of this hearing. This hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to offer comments to help ensure that all relevant factors are considered before a final permit decision is made. Please be advised that the department is limited in the factors it can consider when making permit decisions and must base the determinations only on whether the permit application has satisfied those requirements of applicable environmental statutes and regulations granted to ADEM by the legislature. Persons giving testimony may be questioned by the hearing officer or other department staff to clarify points and to develop a better understanding of what is being presented. This proceeding tonight is not an open forum as in a question and answer session. This hearing is an opportunity for you to submit comments that you wish the department to consider in the final review of the permit applications. However, you may propose a comment in the form of a question which will be compiled and addressed by the department in its complete response to comments. In addition to oral testimony, written comments may be submitted on the proposed permit actions. You do not have to make an oral statement tonight in order to have your written comments considered by the department. Written statements may be submitted to the hearing officer tonight or delivered to the department in Montgomery as directed in the public notice for this hearing. All written statements previously submitted and those received by the department before the end of the public comment period will be included in the hearing record. It is important to note that written comments submitted through postal or electronic mail are given the same consideration as those that are presented in person at this hearing. All oral and written testimony will be included in the hearing record. After giving full consideration to the hearing record, the department will make its final decision on the proposed permit action and develop responses to comments for the proposed permits. The hearing record, final permit determinations, and responses to comments will be posted to the department's e-file system. This hearing is being captured by a court reporter to develop a transcript of this hearing for review by the department. In addition, the entire proceeding is being recorded on video to be posted on the department's YouTube channel to make it accessible to the public. Now let us move on to the purpose of this hearing, the receipt of public comments. The order of appearances of persons giving testimony will be as follows. First, representatives of the department's land division, then a representative of the Alabama Power Company, then any elected officials or their representatives who have pre-registered to speak. All remaining members of the public will be heard in the order in which they registered during the pre-registration, offered online or by telephone, and then those that registered on-site at the hearing. I now recognize Mr. Devin Jenkins to present a statement on behalf of the department's land division. Devin?
Good evening. My name is Devin Jenkins, and on behalf of the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, we thank you for your participation in the permitting process for the James M. Berry Electric Generating Plant, Permit 49-35. Alabama Power Company has submitted to the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, or ADEM, an application for the initial issuance of a coal combustion residual, or CCR, permit to close for the Plantberry Ash Pond and CCR permit to operate for the Plantberry Gypsum Pond at the James M. Berry Electric Generating Plant. The Plantberry Ash Pond is a CCR surface impoundment located in sections 32 and 5, Township 1 North and 1 South, Range 1 East in Mobile County, Alabama, consisting of approximately 670.85 acres with a disposal area that consists of approximately 593.23 acres. Plantberry Gypsum Pond is a CCR surface impoundment located in sections 31 and 5, Township 1 North and South, Range 1 East in Mobile County, Alabama, consisting of approximately 53.15 acres with a disposal area that consists of approximately 20.43 acres. The waste stream for the Plantberry Gypsum Pond would be CCR, including fly ash, bottom ash, boiler slag, and flue gas desulfurization materials generated from burning coal for the purpose of generating electricity. The service area for the Plantberry Gypsum Pond would be the Alabama Power Company. The maximum average daily volume of waste disposed at the Plantberry Gypsum Pond would be 2,000 cubic yards per day. The proposed permit would require the permittee to manage CCR in accordance with the conditions of the proposed permit, ADEM Administrative Code Chapter 335-13-15, standards for the disposal of coal combustion residuals in landfills and surface impoundments, and the approved permit application. Groundwater monitoring and corrective action requirements in the proposed permit establish a groundwater monitoring system of wells that provide an accurate representation of the groundwater quality underlying the units, and a groundwater monitoring plan to establish appropriate sampling and analysis of the system to detect the presence of CCR constituents. For units where CCR constituents exceed acceptable levels, the proposed permit establishes corrective action requirements to remediate contamination caused by the units. Closure criteria in the proposed permit establish requirements for all units to close in accordance with specified standards and timeframes. Post-closure criteria in the proposed permit require each unit be maintained for a period of time after closure, including maintaining groundwater monitoring and corrective action to ensure the long-term safety of units that are closing. Operating criteria in the proposed permit establish requirements for the disposal of CCR in all units approved to accept waste, including the allowable waste streams and daily volumes permitted to be disposed of, plans to control fugitive dust, and inflow design floods and inspection requirements. The permittee must comply with all conditions of the proposed permit, except to the extent for and the duration such non-compliance is authorized by a variance granted by ADEM. The first variance requests to exclude boron as a Appendix 4 assessment monitoring constituent. The second variance requests groundwater protection standards of 6 micrograms per liter for cobalt, 15 micrograms per liter for lead, 40 micrograms per liter for lithium, and 100 micrograms per liter for molybdenum. The third variance requests the final grade of the cover system be less than 5% and greater than 25% as specified in the permit application for the plant-berry ash pond. Based on our review of the initial permit application, the department has made a preliminary determination that the proposed facility would be in compliance with the applicable state and federal solid waste disposal requirements and thus protective of public health and the environment. The proposed permit includes the following conditions. 1, upon renewal, the permit would be valid for a period of 10 years. 2, the permittee would conduct groundwater monitoring semi-annually. 3, the permittee would implement and maintain a corrective action program. 4, the permittee would maintain the integrity of the final cover system throughout the life of the life of the permit and post-closure period. 5, the permittee would at all times properly maintain the facility and all systems in accordance with the application and the permit. And 6, the permittee would obtain the approval of ADEM for any change or modification to the facility or a system which might otherwise result in non-compliance with the permit or ADEM's administrative code. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide an opportunity to receive public comment regarding the application and proposed permit. The department welcomes your input to this process and will consider all technical comments prior to making a final decision concerning the issuance of this permit and will develop a response to comments which will become part of the public record and be posted to the department's e-file system. Thank you again for participating in the hearing.
I do not see where a representative of the applicant pre-registered to speak tonight. Is there a representative of Alabama Power Company present? If not, we will move on. We're going to next call on any public officials, and I see on my list here Chief Barb Weaver. Is Mr. Weaver available?
He hasn't checked in.
Okay, if not, we got Cade Kistler.
Yeah.
Good evening. Please speak into the microphone so that we can hear you clearly and make an accurate record. And if you would, please state your name and your title if you have one.
My name is Kay Kistler. I'm the Program Director at Mobile Gatekeeper. Go ahead and give my remarks.
Please.
Thanks. So my comments tonight are on behalf of our nearly 5,000 members across the state of Alabama. And our mission is to provide citizens a means to protect the beauty, health, and heritage of Mobile Bay and our coastal waterways. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this permit. As you know, the coal ash pond at Plant Berry holds 21.7 million tons of toxic coal ash behind an earthen levee in an pond mere feet from the Mobile River in the middle of a hurricane and flood-prone river delta. I was actually there this weekend, and it's always striking how close to the river the pond is. Even before reaching the USGS-defined flood stage, the thin strip of land that separates the ash pond from the river is already submerged, and the river is beginning to inundate the foot of the levee. This is not where anyone would select to site a pond full of toxic waste. Yet the pond is there, and now we have to deal with it. The question before us today is, of course, how? Firstly, regarding Alabama Power's plan to deal with the pollution, one of the biggest failures in this process has been that Alabama Power has not been required to present a formal alternatives analysis. In other states where these analyses were made public, it became eminently clear that excavation of the coal ash to modern line landfills or to be recycled was the best option and highly feasible. Next, I want to draw your attention to the ongoing groundwater pollution and flaws with Alabama Power's plans to deal with it. We know the ash pond is causing significant pollution of the groundwater. Levels of arsenic in monitoring wells at the site are several times higher than the groundwater protection standards. And in the latest groundwater monitoring report, 12 of the 16 monitoring wells showed statistically significant levels of arsenic. Alabama Power's plan, monitored natural attenuation, is at its core a wait-and-see approach, whereby Alabama Power covers the top of the pond and hopes to see groundwater pollution stop. In their own corrective measures plan, they estimate that it might take 2 decades or more, but confess they really aren't sure how long it will take. That should be enough to say this is an inadequate plan. By the time Alabama Power's plan can be concluded a failure based on these standards, executives at the company and the ADM staff reviewing this permit will be retired. The citizens of coastal Alabama, however, will still be dealing with pollution. This is not acceptable. On the surface, the plan seems flawed at best. The pond is unlined on the bottom, and groundwater elevations that Alabama Power has reported are well above the bottom of the ash. No matter how well the facility is capped, there will be ongoing rewetting of the ash by groundwater and subsequent generation of leachate. The success of Alabama Power's monitored natural attenuation solution is dependent on no rewetting. Several hydrogeologists that have reviewed this issue have confirmed, though, that rewetting will occur. This alone clearly violates the CCR rule in ADM's state coal combustion program and should be enough to compel ADM to deny the proposed permit as currently written. In regard to the unlined bottom of the pit, I want to bring up a report by a leading electric utility trade group, the Electric Power Research Institute. EPRI says clay layers need to have a hydraulic conductivity of 10 to the -8 or less to be protective of human health and the environment at coal ash ponds. The soils underlying Berry have much higher conductivities. While Alabama Power has consistently argued that the hydraulic conductivity of the clay layer at Berry between 10 to the -5 and 10 to the -7 is sufficient to stop groundwater pollution, the EPRI report provides strong evidence to refute that. In comments on EPA's proposed alternate liner demonstration, the Environmental Integrity Project specifically points to the clay layer at Plant Berry as an example of site geology that is not appropriate for stopping coal ash pollution into groundwater. In those comments, EIP says the clay layer at Berry is thin, discontinuous, interbedded with sand, and has permeabilities as high as 10 to the -5. Further confirming these fundamental issues with cap-in-place closure has thus far failed to stop ongoing groundwater pollution around the country and in Alabama. In Gadsden, Alabama Power's only site that has been currently capped in place, I think they completed that process in the fall of 2018. Now, almost 3 years later, the most recent groundwater monitoring data shows the pond continues to pollute. with 72 times the groundwater protection standards for arsenic at a monitoring well at the facility. Many others will mention the threat of a spill tonight. Attempting to discount these comments as non-technical or not within ADEM's purview would be a huge mistake. The department should factor into their decision-making the potential of a catastrophic spill at Berry. Over time, the heavy metals in the river will not go away. And no matter the robustness of the dikes and the levees, we all know that infrastructure fails eventually. The best case scenario for leaving ash behind an earthen levee in a flood and hurricane-prone delta is that it holds for a while. Eventually, years of hurricanes, floods, and the river running past the ash pond will take their toll and the levee will breach. In the best case, closure in place is not a solution. It's pushing the problem off on someone else, on a future generation who will ask why we didn't deal with this problem in a permanent fashion. And we'll have to answer frankly that while hundreds of millions of tons of coal ash were removed around the southeast, in Alabama it was just too hard, too expensive. That we didn't have the guts to deal with it, and that we decided that Mobile Bay wasn't worth the added expense. This isn't an impossible solution either. In states all around us, 250 million tons of coal ash is being removed and recycled or put into modern line landfills. In North Carolina, then head of NCDEQ and now head of the EPA, Michael Reagan, ordered the removal of 76 million tons of coal ash, and in doing so he said, "The science points us clearly to excavation as the only way to protect public health and the environment." Now it's ADEM's turn. The proposed permit to leave 21.7 million tons of coal ash on the side of the Mobile River in the Delta soaking groundwater is not only short-sighted, but also dangerous. This plan would leave the ash behind man-made infrastructure looming over coastal Alabama for decades. All this while real solutions are being implemented economically and successfully in states all around us. Solutions that are eliminating the risk of a spill and stopping groundwater pollution. Further, the proposed permit is not sufficient to comply with state or federal rules concerning the closure of coal ash ponds. It will allow groundwater pollution to continue into perpetuity. ADEM should deny this permit and send Alabama Power back to the drawing board to come up with a plan that complies with the requirements of the rule and protects the health, environment, and economy of coastal Alabama. It's the right thing to do, and it's what's required by law. Thank you.
Thank you. Please step up to the microphone and state your name and tell us whether you represent yourself or some other organization and what your title is.
Good evening. My name is Eva Fralick. I am a resident of Silver Hill, Alabama in Baldwin County on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, and I am representing the Fairhope Unitarian Fellowship Environmental Action Committee and the Baldwin County, Alabama chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, and I am a member of Sierra Club, Mobile Gatekeeper, Gulf Coast Creation Care, and I'm a Climate Reality Leadership graduate. Do we get 7 minutes or?
Yes, I'm trying to.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll hold off.
It's working just a minute ago.
I'll talk fast. How's that?
It's just not responding. There we go. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for holding this hearing and for your time and attention. I appreciate your public service. I realize this hearing is being recorded for posterity and will be available on the YouTube. I am here as a witness for the rivers and the earth and her people, and as a caretaker for creation and future generations, for those yet to come, and for our youth and disadvantaged residents who don't have a voice yet or are unable or unwilling to speak. I come in peace and with love. We are all brothers and sisters, especially in this time and this place full of nature's bounty and diversity. I know this is a technical proceeding and that you are tasked with managing the environment. I am here to connect the dots of the climate crisis and the impending environmental disaster if the plant-berry coal ash pond is allowed to remain in place. 1, climate change is real, it's getting warmer. 2, it's caused by humans, and 97% of scientists agree that it is being caused by human greenhouse gas emissions. And it's bad, and it's worse than we predicted. The 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report has confirmed what we've known for decades. Increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events is a result of climate change. We can ignore the facts, we can deny the facts, but that will not change the facts. Regarding the plant-berry CCR permit for the closure and cap in place of the coal ash pond, we know it's toxic, and the EPA has labeled coal ash as a solid waste like our garbage or They're thrown out leftovers, banana peels, and coffee grounds, but it is actually a hazardous waste, and as such should be so classified, but that's off subject. So we know it's toxic, we know it leaks, and although it may be legal to cap it in place, the potential for disaster remains. As sea levels rise, as extreme weather events bring even more record rain and flooding, it is but only a matter of time before the dam is breached or washed away. The people and state of Alabama's motto has always seemed to be, the solution to pollution is dilution. In this case, this cannot stand. A deadly ash flow into the Mobile-Tensile River Delta of epic proportions, full of toxic, radioactive, heavy metal elements, will destroy the bay for a long time. In environmental justice circles, we believe the polluter pays. In this case, as we all use electricity, we all will pay. We, as customers and taxpayers and residents, want the unlined coal ash pond moved out of the delta to a safer, inland-lined pit, no matter what it costs or how long it takes. And we want Alabama Power and the Southern Company to pay for it. If corporations are considered legally as people, then they are liable for cleaning up their and our mess. We can pay for it now or later. Later it will be more expensive and maybe too late. These coal ash pond spills have happened in North Carolina and Tennessee. Please, this is your job. It is your responsibility to protect the health and safety of Alabama's citizens and not kowtow to big business, especially fossil fuel and energy companies. Do not rubber stamp this request just because they have dotted their I's and crossed their T's. We, the citizens, demand clean energy from renewable resources like wind, solar, and hydropower. This will create well-paying jobs and a healthy and safe future for this generation and all generations to come. Do the right thing. Make Alabama Power move their ash. We have less than 10 years to reduce carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and must reach net carbon zero emissions by 2050 if we are to keep this earth habitable. We are talking about our survival. My comments in the form of questions are, 10 years from now, or when perhaps you're my age, 61, what will this world look like if we refuse to acknowledge the truth about carbon change and our role in it? What will our descendants say when they find out we had the duty and power to make a difference and save this area back in 2021 and we just did nothing, or we said I was just doing my job, or we were following the rules? I ask, what will it take for you to lead and be proactive on this issue? Is it possible to change your mindset to see that our future depends on what we do today now? Can we agree that what has to be done may not be popular or cheap, but that the cost of not doing it is something that we will hand down to innocent future generations when they have to pay for the mess we have today? If this government is for the people, by the people, why is no one listening to the people? Is it moral or conscionable to allow a company to pollute, to allow them to pollute even greater amounts of hazardous waste, or to exempt them from accountability of elements such as arsenic, lead, boron, cobalt, lithium, molybdenum, knowing that these are cancer-causing agents and we have a cancer cluster in Baldwin County? Not only is this a terrible environmental disaster waiting to happen, what has happened here, what has been allowed to happen here, allowing this coal ash pond to remain, should be a crime. And Alabama and the Southern Company need to be responsible corporate citizens and be held accountable and liable. Make the polluter pay. This is not a coin flip, should we not move the coal ash. No question, we must move the coal ash. The only questions are how, when, where, and who will pay. This is what we want. We want Alabama Power to stop using fossil fuels, switch to clean energy electricity production. We want Alabama Power to do the right thing and move their toxic hazardous waste to a safer storage place. We want Alabama Power to stop trying to subvert the will of the people by delaying, denying, and ignoring what must be done. That dam will fail and it will be on them, and you know who will pay? We all will. So we say move it now, use our electric bill money and the millions of money that Alabama Power makes to pay for it. This is really a no-brainer. Science is on our side. We know polluted water and air and soil causes cancers, respiratory and neurological diseases, and early death. All it takes is for Alabama Power, the Public Service Commission, and ADEM to put their heads together and say, we have listened to the people, our customers, and the customer is always right. We want this sword hanging over our heads and the heads of our kids and grandkids and their grandchildren moved to a safer inland lined coal ash pit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. God bless.
May I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name's Terry Manion. I'm a resident of downtown Mobile. I was here a couple of months ago for the hearing on the dewatering plant, so I kind of know the drill. I was happy to see a number of people here tonight, and also that we're not ushered out the side door by the pool. We get to go out the front door. So happy to see that. I'm going to approach this with two scenarios. First scenario would be that the CCR removal process is still open for discussion. I'm being optimistic. Being realistic, I'll assume that the CCR removal process is complete and only the permit is open to comment and suggestion. So I'd like to do a couple of analogies. They aren't perfect, but I think you'll see where I'm coming from. If you have a seriously decayed and infected tooth, would you have a tooth whitening procedure? Not likely. More likely, you would have a root canal to remove the decaying rot. However, we found over history, and I personally have had several root canals, that after about 10 years, the tooth is dried out, and you're faced with a cracked tooth and having to look at a different procedure. It might be an extraction, it could be an implant. Point here being is that we don't know what the future will hold for solutions that we think now are very modern. Another analogy would be if you had a cancerous skin lesion. Would you use max factor to cover it up? No, more likely you go to the dermatologist and have the growth removed. Another analogy, when a leaking water pipe in your wall grows mold on the drywall, would you just repaint it to cover up the mold? No, more likely you would remove the drywall and any damaged studs, fix the leak, and then replace with new framing and drywall. So with those base analogies, I would ask that you all approach this as if you were in the shoes of those of us who live downriver, down bay from Plant Berry. Why not look at fixing this problem as if it impacted you directly, not if you live in Montgomery or Birmingham? That's all fine, but put yourselves in our shoes. So what I'm suggesting is don't cover it up, dig it up. So just to state some of the things that are in the permit now, the Barry Ash Pond is a CCR, coal combustion residual surface impoundment. An interesting statistic that I found is that the plant discharges its waste heat about twice of its electrical output into the Mobile River. The gypsum pond is also a CCR surface impoundment. And that is going to be a place to deposit materials generated from coal ash for the purpose, or from burning coal for the purpose of generating electricity. So the maximum daily volume of waste that's in your permit is listed at 2,000 cubic yards today. A statistic that I found from the Alabama Power's federally required November 2017 inspection was that the coal ash in the pond was 33 feet deep with an estimated volume of 21 million cubic yards. So if we assume the plant's been operating for 60 years, divide that by 21 million, you come up with 350,000 cubic yards per year. We take 365 days a year, that's 900 cubic yards a day. Why are you allowing 2,000? Are they going to be burning more coal instead of the gas that we've been led to believe? So that's not a good thing. In the standard conditions, Section 2E7, there's a duty to provide information if requested. I'm saying that perhaps this information should not be requested but be required on a quarterly basis, and that the records that are required to be kept be put out there on the internet for public watchdog review and certainly ADEM review. There are other references, Section 4E and Section 7F, that deal with record keeping. Section E20, transfer the permit. The permit may be transferred to a new owner or operator, and then it can be has to be reviewed by ADEM. Okay, notwithstanding post closures. So following the closure, the owner or operator of a CCR unit must comply with the Uniform Environmental Covenants Program. And all of this needs to be signed off. And you state if it's a corporation or an organization or other legal entity, needs to be signed by a principal executive officer of at least the level of VP or by a duly authorized representative. No, have it signed by a corporate officer. Make some teeth into this thing. And also include that the environmental covenant is fully incorporated into the deed. The general operating procedures and conditions talk about open burning, where they're allowed to get an open burn permit. That's kind of silly, since they've been burning coal, depositing pollutants there for 60 years, and you're going to require an open burn permit? I think that's very silly. Allow no burn. Beneficial use. This is very interesting to me. The permittee may store and remove coal combustion residuals for the purpose of beneficial use. I'm suggesting that you all should be proactive and reserve mineral rights, because we don't know what 40 or 50 years down the road these minerals may be worth reclaiming. I don't think there's gold in them hills, but there's valuable minerals and elements that you should reserve the mineral rights for the benefit of ADEM and the state of Alabama. Have it set up into a fund to benefit the catastrophe if and when it happens. So I talked about the 2,000 cubic yards per day, and over 60 years they've only had 965 average. Why don't you reduce that to 1,000 yards per day instead of 2,000? There's a penalty if they go over 20%, so I think you'd be well reserved to do that. I'm going to skip ahead here. The removal of the waste. The gypsum pond, I think, is very interesting, that the new waste is going to be deposited in the gypsum pond, which is actually a mound. It's like the Mississippians are going to live there. It's just a mound. It's above the water. They have a liner, HPE liner, and my last part in there looks at a graph. These things deteriorate over time. They're not meant to be lifetime, so you need to take a look at what elements affect HPD. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you can, if you didn't get to read all your comments, you can submit the written portion of them.
Yes, sir, I did that out front. Do I need to do that online also, or just leave a
No,
copy?
if you submitted them out front, that'd be fine.
Okay, thanks very much, appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Dixon, you can take your mask off to speak into the microphone so we can develop a clear record, and please be aware that you have 7 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Start out by stating your name and who you represent.
My name is Lindsey Dixon. I represent myself as a citizen. I'm a resident of Spanish Fort, Alabama, which sits right along Mobile Bay. Thank you all for taking time and being here tonight. I appreciate that, and you all being here to hear our comments. You know, the water is something that's very important to me and my family. I've grown up on the water. I've spent a lot of time around the water, and really just wanted to come out and express my concerns over this permit and how that's going to impact our bay, our ecosystem, our economy, and making sure that we're really considering these long-term effects. The main concern I have right now is that it's already leaking. We know that there are contaminants being leaked into our groundwater. And what are considering the long-term impacts of that to our ecosystem, and making sure that we know that our bay is an ecologically diverse system, and we want to make sure that we're not going to make decisions now that have long-term impacts to that ecosystem. We also know that Georgia Power is moving coal ash from coastal ash ponds in Georgia now, and my question is, why isn't that being done in Alabama? We all know that we are at risk of flooding and hurricanes, and I think it's not a question of if a major hurricane will hit, it's when and what the impact of that will be, and will that leak toxic chemicals into our water. We know that other coal ash spills have occurred, and what is that also going to do to our economy? You know, we have a major port here in Mobile that is a big part of our economy. And if that were to get shut down, what would that economic impact be to our citizens and the people that live and work here? For me, that risk is just too great. I want that water to be safe for my family. I have 2 children, and who they love spending time on Mobile Bay and being in the water. And I have to consider their safety and whether that natural resource is going to be there for them. So I ask that thank you for listening to us, and please deny this permit to cap it in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Denson, step on up and tell us your name and who you represent, and you got 7 minutes.
All right, thank you. I'm Jennifer Denson. I'm the Executive Director for Partners for Environmental Progress, also known as PEP. We are a nonprofit organization of local business leaders who share the vision of applying science-based environmental best practices to business and community issues. PEP members support strong economic growth balanced with environmental stewardship. Our 220-plus member companies represent large and small manufacturers, shipbuilders, engineering firms, industrial suppliers, and more. Together, they employ more than 22,000 local employees. Our member companies often go above and beyond compliance and implement innovative projects to reduce their carbon footprint and to protect and conserve the natural resources that make Alabama Gulf Coast a desirable place to live and do business. On behalf of the PEP Board of Directors, after very careful review of many sources of information and facts, PEP supports ADEM's issuance of Alabama Power's coal combustion residual permit to close Plant Berry and the ash pond and to operate the Plant Berry gypsum pond. In 2015, the EPA provided two safe and protective options for utilities to choose to close their coal ash ponds: cap in place and to excavate and transport to excavate and transport tons of ash to a lined landfill. In 2018, the ADEM State CCR program requires Alabama Power to submit a closure plan for approval. Both EPA-approved options are challenging, expensive, and have risks. The coal ash ponds have their own specific geographic or hydrologic features that provide different risks and benefits. Therefore, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. The decision for each pond should be based on the features of that particular pond and the best interests of the environment and that local community. Alabama Power has developed a workable plan to cap the ash in place. This plan complies with all state and federal guidelines and in fact goes above and beyond what is required. Using advanced engineering, redundant systems, and other plans, Alabama Power is addressing the risks inherent to groundwater, flooding, and community impact. Alabama Power has developed a plan that they feel the science supports as the safest long-term plan compared to the risks associated with the excavation and transportation option. The coal ash pond at Plant Berry has a unique natural solid clay layer that extends up to 28 feet below the ash. This is a significant natural barrier to protect the groundwater. Scientific analysis by Marlin Cook, commissioned by the Mobile Bay National Estuary Program, finds that once dewatered, contamination of the alluvial and Miocene aquifers underlying the pond at Plant Berry would be highly unlikely. If it occurs, it will reach only a small, isolated portion of the floodplain. Alabama Power began monitoring the groundwater under the pond in 2016 and did find some leaching of certain heavy metals into the alluvial aquifer. However, there is no impact or risk to neighbors, nearby waterways, or drinking water sources at this time. As mentioned, the clay layer above the alluvial aquifer largely restricts water from the pond going into the river supply. This alluvial aquifer does not flow to drinking water sources, but instead to the Mobile River. The small amount of leaching moves 3 feet per year in the river. Once the materials reach the river, the quantity and speed of the river carry them downstream and makes them almost impossible to detect. Once there, the low concentrations in the river present little, if any, health risk to humans. It's expected that the dewatering of the ash will prevent additional leaching. If it doesn't, Alabama Power is required by ADEM to find other means of mitigation. Alabama Power's plan to dewater, cap in place, and monitor goes above and beyond regulations to include additional risk management features. To close the pond and control and manage the flood risk, Alabama Power will provide advanced water treatment to the water removed from the coal ash to make sure it meets environmental standards before it's ever removed. It will reduce the size of the ash pond by 45% by excavating and moving the material farther away from the waterways, creating an additional buffer of 750 yards from the Mobile River. They will construct a redundant dike system. They will route stormwater runoff into an adjacent pond. They will develop a drainage system that will channel any water infiltrating the ash into an on-site water treatment plant. They will build a subsurface retaining wall around the entire consolidated pond as an additional groundwater protection. The retaining wall will extend below ground and tie into that clay layer to effectively seal the material in place. And they will install a specially engineered barrier over the top of the ash to keep it in place and avoid penetration. And they will monitor the groundwater around and under the pond for at least 30 years. There are significant risks involved with the other options to excavate and relocate the ash to an off-site lined landfill. First of all, the number of trucks required to move 22 million cubic yards of ash will significantly increase, perhaps double the time to complete the project compared to capping in place. This will increase the risk of health and safety for the workers and the community. ALDOT anticipates additional traffic accidents will occur due to the many additional trucks on the limited roadways around the site. Plus, the lined landfills in our state are either too close to drinking water sources to be feasible, or they are mostly located near poor or minority communities which already have a desperate lack of resources. ADEM's review of the Alabama Power permit has determined the proposed plan will be in compliance with state and federal solid waste disposal requirements and therefore protective of public health and environment. We support the conditions that ADEM has set for the permit, including groundwater monitoring, maintaining the integrity of the final cover system throughout the life and post-closure period, and the establishment of corrective action requirements to remediate in case of contamination. Considering ADEM's findings and Alabama Power's additional methods to control and manage flood risk, PEP supports the issuance of the permits to allow Alabama Power to implement their plans for the coal ash pond closures, cap in place at Plant Berry, and to operate the gypsum pond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and if you didn't get to read all your comments, you can submit them in writing.
I will, thank you.
Hello, I'm Barb Comstock. Are you ready for me? Ready for me? Okay.
We're ready, go ahead.
I live over in Daphne. I've lived there about 12 years. And I talked to, and I appreciate you letting us have an opportunity to talk to you. I talked to my brother and sister-in-law. They are involved in protesting the Twin Metals sulfide ore mine up in the Boundary Waters, adjacent to the Boundary Waters. And they warned me, they said, when you give your talk, don't talk about how much you love the water or how much you love the animals or the fish or whatever. So that's not going to matter. What's going to matter is facts and figures. So I spent a little time going online and getting some facts and figures. The fishing industry, the commercial fishing industry in the Mississippi and Alabama area, coastal area, contributed $79.3 million and $39 million to the gross regional products, respectively. The economic impact of the state's tourism industry was estimated to be $5.4 billion in 2019. And 198,890 jobs were directly or indirectly attributed to the tourism industry. Now this slowed down a little bit when we have the Horizon Deepwater oil spill. And let's not have that same disaster happen again if flooding or a breach causes the Berry plant coal ash pit to spill over into our waterways. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, tell us your name and who you represent, and then we're ready.
My name is Frederick Larry Savelle. I'm a resident. I have a resident property up there off of South Cove Road, close to 43, and I've lived in that area for over 30 years, since 1989. And being in that area, I've been on the community advisory panel up there for many years. I was on it. I also worked with the water board up there at Lemoyne Water Board as far as the wellhead protection program they had. And I done security work in almost all them plants up there at one time or another. I also remember the times when don't quote me on this, but the old Stafford plant or something, ADM had a environmental area up there, cleanup area up there at one time. So I believe that anytime you can move something away from that river is a good thing. Also, with you've got that going on South Cove Road there, they've been hauling dirt from dirt pits to the power plant, either for the dam or for that project, or I know they might be having a building project, but they have tore up South Cove Road. It was resurfaced a few years back, and they've done flipped two or three trucks on that road, and up there by the school, and the road is just getting torn up with the truck going all day long back and forth. Also, with Eagle South wanting to expand the dump up there, that is just adding to the problem. And and right behind the old DuPont plant, you've got the old Mobile site that was tricentennial. University of South Alabama was doing a dig out there. And so that entire area is a historical site. And that's basically what I wanted to bring to your attention.
We thank you. Does that complete your comments?
Sir?
Does that complete your comments?
I wear hearing aids in both ears, but the wife says they don't work.
Is that all your comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Said my piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I grew up right across the street over here. Spent 21 years in the Marine Corps, came back and moved up there.
Okay, tell us your name and who you represent, and if you would like, you can take your mask off so we can better understand you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone sitting here today for allowing us to come in and to the public and to talk about this. My name is Jonathan Hale. I'm the CEO of Prospect Mining and chairman of the Alabama Mining Association. I'm a mining engineer, and I've been mining coal for over 31 years. I'm not an expert in the field of closing ash ponds, but I am an engineer with common sense. I am in favor of Alabama Power's plan for the CCR permit to close their ash pond in place and on site. Let me just go ahead and continue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Environmental advocacy groups will have you to believe there is only one safe and legal way to remove a coal ash pond. Dig it all up and remove it to the landfills miles and miles away. Facts are often overlooked with these groups. It is my understanding, according to the EPA, there are two ways for the coal ash pond sites to be closed: on-site or removal from the site. The EPA left that decision to the facility to come up with a sound engineering plan. ADEM, of course, will evaluate this plan and approve or deny the permit to Alabama Power. Every coal ash pond
in the U.S. has its own site-specific geology. Each site to be removed must be evaluated by the facility to determine the safest way to close and also take into account the surrounding communities on which such closure will have on them. Alabama Power has spent years determining which way is the safest way to close this ash site down. The EPA says that both methods are safe as long as they use sound engineering methods and can be equally protective of the environment. In either method of closure, there is no difference in protecting the groundwater on the site or off-site. Alabama Power will have to follow the plan that is approved in the permit, whether it is on site or 300 miles away. Alabama Power has spent countless engineering hours evaluating the site and has come up with a sound plan that ADEM can approve for their on-site closure. It comes down to the safety of the communities in which we live in. Anytime you add additional truck or car traffic through communities, then there is a risk to public safety. Other risks are trucks spilling their loads on the public roads and waterways. It is my understanding that it will take around 200 truckloads per day for 15 years to remove this coal ash from this pond. To me, that is an unneeded risk to the public and to the environment when you have a different option to safely dispose of the coal ash on site and still protect the groundwater and the environment, which is what we all want to do. I might also add the wear and tear on Alabama's public highways by adding this many trucks daily. Another cost to the Alabama taxpayer. In closing, I for one will always be in favor of safe engineering practices to solve any problems before us. I will not be in favor of something because some environmental groups want to make it as expensive as possible to the facility to operate the coal-fired units, which is the real reason here. Make no mistake, this is only one part of the strategy of what the environmental groups want for their final goal, and that is to ultimately shut down all coal-fired units by whatever methods possible. Actions always have consequences, whether it's positive or negative. If you do not approve this permit, then there will be negative consequences for years by your decision. If we have not learned anything during the freezing weather in Texas this year, then you should know one thing, and that is coal can provide a reliable source to our electric grid no matter what the weather is doing. Coal is a cheap source of power and can safely be burned to provide reliability to the grid, and the byproducts can be disposed of in a safe and responsible way as not harm the environment. Thank you for your time and listening to what I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Can I give this to you?
Sure, you can hand it to us or.
Okay.
Okay, please tell us your full name and who you represent, and if you would like, you can take off your mask so we can better understand you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nicholas Williams. I don't reckon I represent anybody except maybe the group of people that live on the edge of the Delta. I just wanted to come here and speak since they were opening up the floor. I do want to take a second and apologize. My notes I was supposed to bring, I forgot them. Been up since 3 o'clock this morning, went to go turkey hunt, and then I had to go into work, and I got my notes printed out on my phone, so y'all bear with me. I got to lean in and read small print. But I figure there's lots of people that have given y'all facts and numbers, and I figure they can do it better than I can, but what I can tell you is my story growing up here and living on the river. When I was young, my parents would take me and my two sisters down to the beach in an old Jeep Grand Cherokee with wood panels, and we'd play while they fished. We'd chase fiddler crabs, hunt for seashells, play hide and seek on the dunes, and scream whenever we saw a jellyfish in the water. It was a pretty place and it was quiet. My kids will never get that quiet, scenic experience. There's a wall of condominiums where the dunes used to be. If you can brave the traffic and find a place to park, And if you can walk far enough to get away from the hordes of tourists that we've courted in the name of a quick buck, you'll be lucky not to sit down on a tar ball. If you decide to skirt the summer masses and try for a quiet picnic on the banks of the eastern shore, or maybe somewhere along Dog River, you'll have to hope that the fecal matter floating in the water is from geese and not overflow from the local sewage systems. Chocolata, Justin's, Ducker's Bay, Big and Little Bateau, or Batty if you're talking to an old-timer, they're silting in due to the causeway and the I-10 bridge catching all the sediment that washes down the rivers every time it rains on a farm, a new subdivision, or a fresh cutover. You can try to visit the Dauphin Island Sea Lab, where you can learn all about how the grass flats are dying, and we won't be able to eat any of the fish out of the bay if we keep doing what we've been doing. I've been hunting, fishing, and exploring the Mobile-Tensaw Delta for most of my admittedly short life. 20 years I've been poking around up there looking for deer and hogs and ducks and big old flatheads, looking for game, but also looking for the peace that a vast mass of calm water and cypress trees brings, looking for a sense of being and perspective that you find when you stand on top of the Indian mounds or stare at the champion cypress tree and realize that you're really very small in the grand scheme of things. I've gone there to ask myself why when a childhood friend washed down a bottle of pain pills with a quart of whiskey and slit her wrists. And I've gone there to celebrate a new wife, a new job, and a new home. A new home actually came into my life when I was floating down Tensaw River, and I saw a for sale sign on an old fish camp sitting up on the bank of Turkey Bluff. That's about 6 miles due east of Barry. We saw it, me and my wife did, and we thought it looks like a happy place just to sit on the porch and see what we can see, maybe raise a few kids and teach them to catch bluegill and pick muscadine grapes. The Delta is a special place, not just to me, but it should be to the whole state, the whole country, and the whole world. The biodiversity is astounding. Because of the Mobile River Basin, Alabama is home to more species of freshwater fish, mussels, snails, turtles, and crawfish than any other state. We have 350 species of freshwater fish, 84 species of crawfish, 18 species of turtles, and most of them are right there in that delta. It's a sanctuary for neotropical migrants and waterfowl. It's an amazing place, and it's a miracle that it survived as long as it has. This country has not always demonstrated foresight while we were building our communities and our businesses. But Alabama has the benefit of being seemingly perpetually behind the times, thanks to the Civil War, the Reconstruction, and the Civil Rights Movement fallout that we faced. We lagged behind and are just now starting to hit the growth spurt that the rest of the country has been experiencing for 100 years. And with that comes a chance and a choice. We have a chance to see what happens to communities when they don't prioritize protecting their wild places, and we have a choice to try and do it right this time. We know better. I believe leaving the coal ash ponds in place is taking a chance with something that should not be left to chance. I believe this because this isn't my first rodeo. I've listened to BP, Fairhope Utilities, and various plants located on the rivers of this state tell me that it's going to be just fine, and it not be fine unless you define fine as tar balls, feces, chemical spills, and fish consumption advisories. Those ponds are sitting in a floodplain. They're sitting in an area subject to violent storms. They're in a volatile and ever-changing ecosystem. There are cypress trees miles out in the Gulf, and there are shark teeth fossils as far north as Evergreen, Alabama. The waters here changed dramatically, and I know that firsthand because I lost half of my yard last year in the flood. And it may not impact the people in this room during their lifetime, but I find it hard to swallow that it's going to be fine for the people who will one day have to live with choices they didn't get to make. I say this all because I'll have a child one day, and if they ever ask me, Dad, how come we can't swim in the river like you used to? I want to be able to look at them and tell them I did what I could to try and make sure that they could. The Delta matters to me. It should matter to everyone in Alabama. It's fighting enough as it is. I would ask you please not to add one more issue to the list of things that will ultimately mean that my descendants and yours will have to settle for old pictures of what used to be. We've lost the beach, and we're losing more and more special places every day. We don't have to jeopardize the Mobile-Tensaw Delta. And that's all I got to say. I'm going to leave y'all with an extra minute of your lives.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, please tell us your name and who you represent, if anyone other than yourself.
Yes, is that part of my time?
Yes.
Can I just get, okay, let me just get started then because it's long. Good evening, I'm Lela Lowe. I live at 2609 Shea Court in Mobile, Alabama, 36695. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the president of the Mobile Environmental Justice Action Coalition. MEJAC, as it is called, was founded by residents of the historic Africatown community in 2013 in partnership with regional advocates to address environmental racism throughout Mobile County. I serve as MEJAC's secretary. Environmental racism is an everyday occurrence in Mobile County, including the parts directly affected by the Alabama Power James M. Berry Electric Generating Plant Facility seeking draft coal combustion residual permit number 49-35. The Alabama Plant Berry coal-fired power plant is located in a fairly rural part of Mobile County. However, the EJ Screen GIS tool hosted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, describes the area where Alabama Power's coal-fired Plant Berry facility operates as being in the highest 95 to 100 percentile with respect to National Air Toxics Assessment overlays for both cancer risk and respiratory hazard index, raising serious EJ concerns for all federal environmental permits issued in the area and for Plant Berry specifically. The consideration of environmental justice and federal permits is required by Executive Order 12898 or EO 12898, as defined by the EPA as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. That EJ goal, EPA says, will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards and equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. That vision is where the execution of ADEM's permitting authorities should be leading communities like those around Plant Berry in draft permit processes like this one. However, it doesn't appear to be a leading principle at all, considering the ongoing risks posed by the proposed permit to keep Alabama Power's coal ash toxic waste dump on the banks of the Mobile River. ADEM's mission is impossible to achieve without addressing EJ concerns before it makes decisions. We know that environmental justice provisions like EO 12898 do not impose enforceable duties or responsibilities that are distinct from other regulations, but meaningful involvement from the communities who will be most affected by ADEM's decisions begins with the disclosure of specific information that is coherent and easily accessible to a wide audience. In the instance of this draft permit, the communication should clearly include precisely what and how much of Plant Berry's coal ash is currently leaching into the Mobile River and nearby groundwater, how emissions will be controlled and monitored to protect health and the environment, and how a publicly accessible compliance record will be maintained. Additionally, all requirements in the draft permit must be particular enough for enforcement rather than leaving it to director or permittee discretion. Because EPA will ultimately review whatever permit is approved by ADEM, it is incumbent on ADEM to focus their attention on the environmental and human health effects of their actions on minority and low-income populations. ADEM must reckon with the extent to which state law curtails or bars ADEM's ability to address environmental justice. Without doing so, ADEM's federal permitting program is at risk of being inconsistent with applicable federal law. With respect to the merits of the draft coal ash toxic waste dump permit, coal ash contamination of the Mobile River and nearby groundwater has serious implications for often low-income communities who rely on freshwater seafood and other wild game for subsistence protein consumption. MEJAC is very concerned about the effects of bioaccumulated heavy metals in the environment around Plant Berry and the Mobile River. Both arsenic and cobalt are currently leaching from the Plant Berry coal ash toxic waste dump into the Mobile River and nearby groundwater. Migration of these metals into wild game and freshwater seafood is likely happening and is unacceptable. Considering those most at risk of its overconsumption and the utter lack of communication about the risks of such consumption, leaving the polluting substances in the ground to pollute in place is an outrageous proposal that ADEM must reject. MEJAC is also very concerned with fear-mongering that suggests dirty diesel trucks carrying dry ash are the only method of evacuating the toxic leaching coal ash waste from the Plantberry coal ash dump to a lined upland appropriate landfill. There are rail lines at Plantberry. There are also now a variety of low and zero emission tractor-trailer heavy-duty vehicles available on the market whose lifespans and costs of maintenance are more than competitive with traditional diesel engines. An electric provider should have no issue with electric vehicle procurement. To be frank, the lack of imagination and willpower to protect public health with respect to all decisions by Alabama Power is astounding. ADEM shouldn't allow vulnerable communities to fall prey to the propaganda that suggests only a singular alternative to polluting in place is possible. In conclusion, ADEM's ultimate permit for Alabama Power's coal ash plan must require the coal ash to be moved to an upland lined landfill, as well as preserve all communities' rights to clean water, clean air, clean soil, and public safety. The public understands that these are not mutually exclusive ideals, and to pit any against the other in this instance is willful complicity in profoundly dishonest misinformation. While the pandemic may have complicated every aspect of life, including the administration of federal environmental law and policy, the urgency of environmental justice as a regulatory decision-making strategy that ADEM must accommodate has not diminished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would somebody like the written, is somebody taking it?
Sure, we'll take it. And at this time, I think we've been going a little over an hour. We're going to take about, say, a 10-minute break. So we're going to go off the record at 7:18. Let's all try to be back and ready to go at 7:28. Okay, it's 7:29 and we're have taken a short break and we're back on the record now. Please tell us your name and who you represent, and you've got 7 minutes.
Alrighty, well, good evening. My name's Amanda Salazar and I work for Manufacture Alabama. We're the state's only trade association dedicated exclusively to the needs of our manufacturers across the state. Manufacture Alabama works firsthand with the Alabama Power Company through our environmental working groups that are made up of various industries across our state. And we're acutely aware of their commitment to compliance and stewardship. Manufacture Alabama and our environmental committee supports ADEM's permit for the safe closing and sealing of the CCR impoundments at Alabama Power's Plantberry. As you know, the rules used to develop the plan for closing this impoundment were developed by the EPA under the Obama administration and were left largely unchanged during the Trump administration's EPA. Manufacture Alabama fully supports Alabama Power in this effort and strongly encourages ADEM to issue this permit. We appreciate that Alabama Power is not only following the rules, but also going above and beyond with a plan that will protect public health and the environment. They have been and continue to be an excellent partner for the state's manufacturing industry, and we appreciate their environmental and conservation efforts. Thanks so much.
Okay, please tell us your name and who you represent, and you've got 7 minutes.
Okay, my name is Michael Moe, and I'm Choctawhatchee Riverkeeper. Done a lot of work in the past with ADEM. You guys got a good folks at ADEM. It really disturbed for me to see a permit this flawed. It is really flawed in light of the mission statement. You know, your mission is at ADEM is to assure the citizens of the state a safe, healthful, and productive environment. The permit should never be offered. It lacks a great deal of important information, and that is it lacks a thorough risk assessment. You know, the permit has in it hazards. It identifies a groundwater hazard, which really isn't a hazard, it's already happening, and the loss of containment. But to be a risk assessment, it has to couple those hazards with what is the harm. What's the harm if we lose containment of that ash pond? That's acknowledged. You know, that hazard is acknowledged. And risk assessment, if you've got a hazard, you cannot eliminate that hazard. If it could be eliminated, it would not be a hazard. And the impact of loss of containment is so large. You know, Alabama Power admits what's going to happen and how much sediment's going to be down in the delta. Okay, so how many people are gonna go to restaurants if they think they're getting Mobile seafood? How many people are gonna come vacation and stay at motels? How many people are gonna decide not to retire in Mobile Bay if that facility loses containment of the ash pond? Those estimates have not been made. And that threat of loss of containment is only going to get larger with rising sea level and larger storm events that we're seeing in the last decade all over the Gulf. It's larger storms, greater rainfall, increasing threat of loss of containment of that system. The ecological and economic harm from loss of containment is so large. I frankly believe if a risk assessment were done, if the power company were required to do one, or if ADAM chartered one to be done, that risk assessment would be so dire that I don't think a politician in the state, unless they're on the payroll of the power company, would approve that permit. So, it really begs the question, why would ADAM even offer this permit? It should be withdrawn. ADAM, like every other state in the region, should require the ash to be removed from ponds that are in the riparian area, that are in the floodplain of the stream. And they should be removed to a secure lined landfill away from the floodplain, and also environmental justice considerations. They shouldn't be moved to a union town or another union town and dumped on another poor community like happened with the ash from Kingston. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, please tell us your name and who you represent.
My name is Scott Snyder. I represent myself, live in Daphne on Mobile Bay, and just wanted to share a few remarks or my perspective on the permit. I'm sure I can't tell you anything that you haven't heard by the previous speakers. I am opposed to the permit. Reasons being that, it's, from my perspective, it's been shown, pardon me, with what's going on at the covered pond in Gadsden, that is continuing to leak chemicals into the groundwater. Don't know why we would permit the same type of setup here when it's already shown that Plant Berry is already leaking arsenic and other harmful chemicals into the groundwater. And with a partial dewatering, with basically moving it around, capping it, there's no evidence that the groundwater won't continue to be polluted. And that's before you even talk about the potential of a catastrophic event. So again, I don't want to take my entire 7 minutes, because I'm sure y'all have heard it pretty much all. The only thing I do want to share is that this is really a generational decision from my perspective for ADAM, and not in the sense of boomers or millennials or Gen X, but it's a decision that is going to affect the generations of people that live here, my kids, their kids, their kids. Without the removal of the coal ash, they're going to be faced with this continuing environmental challenge that's going to have to be addressed at some point in time. Whether it's now or 20 years down the road or 30 years down the road, it's going to happen. And so, I would just ask y'all to consider that. I know it's a difficult decision. There's a lot of stakeholders here, but certainly we, the citizens of this area, are dependent upon ADAM to do the right thing here and to really protect the generations that will live with the decision that you make as it relates to this permit. So again, I know I appreciate the job ADAM does with asked to do a whole lot of stuff with a very small budget, but that's a whole nother conversation. But certainly do appreciate the position you're in, and hope you'll give what you've heard tonight and our request every due consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
All right.
Good evening. Please tell us your name and who you represent.
Good, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Seth Hammett. I'm the chairman of the Energy Institute of Alabama, an organization that represents the 6 entities that are involved in either the generation, the transmission, or the distribution of electricity. One of our members, Alabama Power Company, of course, does all 3 of those. And I'm here tonight to ask for your affirmative approval of the permit pending before you that Alabama Power Company has filed to cap in place the coal ash at Plant Berry. There's 3 points I would make, and I'd make them pretty quick. First, to close the old coal ash pond and cap it is legal. It's the Environmental Protection Agency provides 2 ways to take care of coal ash. You can either transport it away or you can cap it in place. And studies have shown both by Alabama Power Company and by an independent evaluator, an expert in the field, that this is a safe procedure. Alabama Power Company has been studying this issue for over 3 years now, and has again hired an outside expert to come in and reaffirm what they found. And again, I would tell you that capping in place is a safe procedure. And the third point I would make is it's a common practice. There are those that say everybody else in the South is trucking away their coal ash, when in fact over 60% of the coal ash that's in the South in coal ash ponds is being capped in place. The final point I would make is this: those of us that work in this industry live here ourselves, and many of us have children and grandchildren that also live here, and we would not promote the idea of doing anything that would be dangerous to our families. So I'd ask you to approve the permit as presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please tell us your name and who, if anyone, you represent.
I'm Catherine Hastings, and I'm representing the Fairhope Friends meeting. We're Quakers. I want to thank you so much for letting us testify here and for coming all the way down from Montgomery. Quakers, I want to put my testimony in kind of context. None of us are environmental scientists. All of us are just concerned citizens. And Quakers regard each environmental issue as a spiritual and moral challenge, as well as a practical concern. And we consider ourselves stewards of the earth, and it's our duty to pass on the earth in a better condition than we received it. As one of our founders wrote, John Woolman, he was an American Quaker, a writer, an abolitionist. The produce of the earth is a gift from our gracious Creator, and to impoverish the earth now to support outward greatness appears to be an injury to the succeeding age. I think probably all of you have been in this room a long time, and all of you have heard all about the characteristics of the coal ash pond at Berry. I mean, you know, it's 597 acres. It's on a peninsula jutting out into the water. It's only 5 feet above the aquifer. The pond is unlined. There's an earthen dam around it. And you know that the EPA became involved in coal ash after the Kingston, Tennessee spill that ruined 300 acres and polluted the Emory River. And you know that that's when it began to write regulations about coal ash. And you know that in 2015, the EPA told Alabama Power that they could not put any more coal ash at Plant Berry because the pond was unlined. It was seeping contaminants. And because it was only 5 feet above the aquifer. The problem is now, what do we do with the coal ash? And it's every citizen's problem. And Alabama Power has proposed capping the coal ash pond in place. And they've said they would build dikes, build walls underneath it to prevent some of the pollution, and the dikes would strengthen it, that in reducing the footprint of the pond, it would be slightly further away from the river. But the facts are, it's still an unlined pond, and it's still on that peninsula, jutting into the river. It's still very close to the city of Mobile. It's still built over a stream bed. It's still near one of the most precious wetlands that the United States has, the Tensas Delta. And it's still very close to a backup water supply. Alabama Power has also said in their response to the problem that by capping it in place, it will take less time than if they had to relocate the coal ash. 12 and a half years as opposed to maybe 24. And they've pointed out that in relocating the ash, there's a chance of spillage. And some people are concerned about where the lined landfills are, that thereby impoverished communities that might not be able to monitor the coal ash. In looking at the evidence, we came to the conclusion that the coal ash should be relocated. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, we know that in terms of leaking contaminants, cap in place in other states, they have had situations where there leaks in contaminants. We know that there's contaminants that have leaked at the plant in Gadsden. What really concerns us is the integrity of the dam, more than anything else. Alabama Power, in designing their plan, designed that their plan on the basis of a 1,000-year flood. The problem is the weather patterns are changing. Rain storms are more intense. We've had more 1,000-year floods. I think 2019 we had 5. And we are in a zone where there are hurricanes and tropical storms. If a hurricane came up north, up the river, and the river rose, it would stay high for several days, and there's a possibility that the dam would collapse. And we know that because that's what happened in North Carolina on the Cape Fear River, and when Hurricane Florence came of it. And it was, again, disastrous. Alabama Power has indicated that it would be cheaper to cap in place, and the consumer would have to bear less cost. Well, we think a cleanup would be absolutely disastrous. We know that it would devastate the communities nearby. We know that it would affect the Tensas Delta. We know that it would affect the economy of the Mobile area in the areas of fishing, recreation, and tourism. And most of all, it might end up with a loss, as well as the biological degradation of the Delta. It might end up with a loss of life. 11 people were killed when the dam was compromised at Kingston, Tennessee, and at least 36 workers have died of related causes to the coal ash, and there are ongoing lawsuits. We hope that if the coal ash is relocated, and we sincerely hope it is, that great care will be taken that we can find a landfill that will not compromise a nearby community, a lined landfill. And if one doesn't exist, we believe it should be constructed. And last of all, we see this as a kind of problem that's statewide, because there are 9 coal-fired plants in Alabama, and there are some 44 ash ponds. South Carolina has moved its ash. Virginia is moving its ash. North Carolina is moving its coal ash. We hope that the power companies and that the Alabama Department of Environmental Management and that advocacy groups for the environment can come together and develop a plan that deals with the coal ash as a whole. We think, though, that Plant Berry is setting a pattern, and we hope it is the correct pattern.
Well, thank you for your comments, and if you didn't get to give all your comments, you can give your written comments, and they will be considered.
Thank you very much, and once again, we appreciate you doing this.
Okay, please tell us your name and who you represent, and you've got 7 minutes.
All right. Can I remove the map?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Glad to be with you all tonight. My name is Jesse McDaniel, and I'm here just speaking in my capacity as an individual, not representing any particular organization. But I am a resident of Mobile and parent of 3 children in Mobile, and I work every day in Baldwin County. Get to enjoy our beautiful Eastern Shore and Bay Minette area. And so I feel compelled to come and speak tonight. I'll just be honest with you, I was sort of felt convicted to do it because I understood this is very important for our environment here where we live and work. So I'm not here to demonize Alabama Power or anything like that. I know people that work at Alabama Power. I appreciate what they do, and certainly think that they're entitled to make a profit in their business and everything. So that's not what this is about for me. But I do believe that as a corporate citizen, Alabama Power does have a responsibility to manage this situation safely. And I'll be honest with you, the more that I learned about the coal ash pond there at Plant Berry, the more alarmed I became, because when I moved down here many years ago, I had no idea that this was even in existence. It really wasn't until the coal ash spill in Tennessee that I really even learned about coal ash. I guess I was kind of old enough at that point to understand the environmental impact of something of that nature. But I grew up in Boy Scouts, and I've always appreciated the natural earth. I believe God gave us a responsibility to be good stewards of the earth, and I've always tried to practice that even in my own life. And if you look at other states and how these types of situations have come up, because this isn't some mystery here, coal ash exists in other places, other utilities have these types of operations that have to dispose of coal ash. And so if you look at the record, ADM has already fined Alabama Power for this plant. It's already causing leaks or problems in the soil or in the water, and exceeded certain levels of toxins enough to warrant a fine from ADM. So it's already causing some issues. But my main concern is, as a parent, thinking about the world that we're going to leave behind for our kids and so forth. It's really disturbing to think about the possibility of what would happen if we had a 100-year flood and overwhelmed the facility or the pond up there, which is, if you look at the weather and what's happening around the country, you're seeing more frequent flooding, extreme weather events. And being on the Gulf Coast, of course, we naturally deal with hurricanes all the time, and they're getting stronger and more common. And so the plant up there, the coal ash pond, it really does concern me. I do not support the permit request to cap in place and leave the coal ash where it is. If we can put a man on the moon, and all these other states have figured out a way to just move the coal ash to a safe landfill or some other type of recycling situation. We can do that here. My kids deserve a safe environment just like these folks in Georgia or South Carolina or places like that where they have moved the coal ash and it's not a threat as it is here. I think of this plant as a kind of a sword hanging over the head of a victim, just waiting to fall at any moment. And as somebody who cares about the environment very much and cares about posterity, I would hate to see our beautiful region, which is a shining jewel in not just this country but in the world. It's the North American Amazon, as it's called, to be sullied by a disaster of 21 million cubic feet or whatever it is, 21 million tons of ash. The Kingston, Tennessee ash spill was only 1 million gallons of coal ash, and you could easily see that happening here. Again, the staggering size of this is what caught me so strongly. I would just again urge ADM, and I appreciate y'all's attention, and I know it's been a long day, and it's probably not fun to be up here and hear all this, but there's a lot of folks that don't want to see this remain where it is. I am one of those, and I'm just respectfully asking that Alabama Power do what their sister company in Georgia has done and move this coal ash away from the communities here so that it's not a threat. I appreciate it. Don't really have any other further comments, and thank you again for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, please tell us your name and who, if anyone, you represent. And you've got 7 minutes.
All righty, my name is Stephen Nodine, former County Commissioner of Mobile, Alabama, City Councilman of Mobile, Alabama, and resident of Mobile, Alabama. Just want to thank ADM for its opportunity and all the work that we've accomplished, both as a County Commissioner, as a City Council member. I've depended on ADM for many things, particularly Highway 98, many other road projects that we work together. And I also want to thank Gatekeeper, an organization that sometimes I have run head on into in many projects, but do thank them for this opportunity to speak today to ADM. There's a couple concerns that I had regarding the closure of the ash coal plant. And one is, I do not see any representatives from Mobile County Engineering, or any other elected officials over this most important matter. It concerns me greatly because this is an issue that will obviously affect not only many aspects of our health and welfare of Mobile County and surrounding counties. I first started speaking about this almost 20 years ago when I was elected to the City Council, and spoke with Alabama Power on my concerns of ash coal, not only at the current facility that we're speaking of now, but also down at the Port of Alabama. What do we call it? I don't even know what we call it now. But it does concern me that I don't see any elected officials, and that's not my job anymore, but I would bring a couple things to your attention. One is I just had a run-in with a great man, Seth Hammett, former speaker, and without Seth Hammett's help, Mobile County probably would not have Airbus or ThyssenKrupp, and so I bring that point up of compromise. There's always something that we can do. It's not a bad word to compromise. I know you have a job to do at ADM, and the government has its job. The governor has decisions to make that will affect us all here. Seth and I were just reminiscing about that compromise is not a bad word. I do believe that ADEM has the best interest, as well as Gatekeeper, of our concerns that we have in the community. I call myself a Republican environmentalist and always have been. I grew up in South Florida and helped with the restoration of the Everglades, and also, as I just stated, many other issues that concern the environment here in Mobile County. And the concerns of not seeing elected officials here, I don't know. I know the notices go out. I know that as a former county commissioner, we usually throw it upon ADEM. It's ADEM's responsibility. It's ADEM, and I did the same thing with Highway 98. And then we put the pressure, and I don't want to say pressure because this is what you do. You're professionals. You have your cause of action. Gatekeeper has its cause of action, and I do believe that both of you think of the public health and welfare of all the people. Compromise is something I think we can accomplish in this endeavor. Now, I do see that the application has certain heights to the dike of which is going to be contained, and I ask myself, what can ADEM, what can the government do above and beyond of what we're asking of Alabama Power? And Alabama Power is an outstanding community partner, always has been. I spoke about Seth Hammett because it was at a time where we had a Democratic Senate, Democratic House, and a Republican governor. But we were able to achieve compromise and achieve great things together with compromise. And I'm hoping that we find compromise in this regard with Gatekeeper, with ADEM, and with Alabama Power. Without Alabama Power, we would not have the economic development engine we do have here in Mobile County now. And with that, I do believe they're a responsible community partner. And I ask myself this with the compromise question: what can we do to achieve a compromise in this regard? What can we do above and beyond what they're just required to do? Whether it's a landfill, which some of these people I may not work for. I'm an old man now. Landfills were a great cause of consternation, obviously, in many areas because of liners and ability to infiltrate groundwater. And that's one of my greatest concerns here. And that is what exactly this is going to do to groundwater contamination. During the Highway 98 compromise and fight, I should say, with Big Creek Lake, we looked at all tributaries and all water sources in a 5-county area on what, even though Big Creek Lake is here, and what it could do and what effect a highway would go through and what it would do to our ground and now our drinking water supply, but what other counties were going through. And I say that because we all work together on major economic development projects, and we started talking with each other on what we can do. Obviously, this situation has been here for quite some time, and I know that Alabama Power knows and has known for quite some time. What are they going to do? How are they going to? Nobody wants it in their backyard. I do not believe trucking it out would be a plausible thing because of the contamination that could occur or any other substance, any other situation that could occur by moving it. And capping it obviously has its drawbacks also. And this is why I get back to the compromise. What can we do? What can we offer in this application to Alabama Power to reach a plausible compromise with the environmental groups and also with the government officials? Mobile County has very limited opportunity to have input on certain things when it comes to situations like this, but maybe we need to give them a stronger voice in what is happening here. And that is why my concern was I have not seen one city official, one county engineer, nobody from a governmental entity in this surrounding area, and that gives me pause of concern.
Okay. Let me stop you there. You've exceeded your 7 minutes. You are more than welcome to submit your full comments in writing.
Sure.
And we appreciate your comments and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, and I hope you reach a compromise and get this thing resolved. Good to see y'all again.
Okay, please tell us your full name and who you represent, and you may, if you would like, take your mask off so we can better understand you.
Thank you.
And you've got 7 minutes.
All right. My name is Captain James Stephen McClure, P.E. I'm a licensed civil engineer in the state of Alabama. I'm a lead accredited professional working on a sustainability credential. I'm a U.S. Coast Guard Master of Self-Propelled Vessels, less than 50 tons with a sailing endorsement. Just to help you with context of why I'm here, I'm a past Commodore of the Fairhope Yacht Club. I'm a past president of the Eastern Shore chapter of CCA, Coastal Conservation Association, and I retired from the Air National Guard as a lieutenant colonel. I am basically on the water every day. I either go see the water on my way to work, I go make 3 casts before I go to work, I come home, I get on my boat or a kayak or get in the water, I sail. I retired last year, so I have 2 part-time jobs, one driving a boat for the Coast Guard where we train the helicopter pilots and counter drug activities, and another where I'm a sailing instructor for a gentleman that has a boat club for sailboats new in Fairhope. But I spend most of my time on the water, and I met my wife of 40 years sailing, and so we're all about the water, and we need the water to be clean, and we need it to be clean for us and for our children and hopefully their grandchildren and all that. But the coal ash pit at Plantberry leaks. It's polluting the groundwater. Alabama Power says so. Their test results have showed there's arsenic contamination in nearby groundwater. Their current cap in place does nothing to address that. That's what happened in Gadsden at their pit. They closed it, it leaks. And we're not seeing anything happen about that. We appreciate the fact that ADM fined them once, but I'd like to see them fine them every day until they get it fixed. But anyway, I have a great concern about the bad stuff and the coal ash leaching through the dike. Removal from the thing along the river, along what they're doing in a lot of other places, especially Georgia Power. That's what I've never understood. Alabama Power is an awesome corporate citizen. They give back, they have their transformers. I've been to their clay shooting events. They're great people, they're good neighbors. And I don't understand why they have dug in their heels on this issue so bad or so hard when they're doing the right thing in so many other places. But I think it's imperative that we get this coal ash moved. I'll close. I've learned in my sustainability work, Principle 15 from the United Nations Rio Earth Summit way back in 1992. They talk about a thing called precautionary principle. And what it says is it encourages behavior to protect human and environmental health in the face of scientific uncertainty. Right? Some folks say it's going to do this, some folks say it's going to do that, but I don't think we know exactly how all this is going to work if you cap it in place. To me, if it's sitting in the groundwater, then if you have the groundwater is moving, it's creating a plume, it just goes right through there. So I don't think it's a good idea. Alabama Power, they have guys that think it is, but I don't think we're certain. So if it's not certain, these guys say when human activities lead to morally unacceptable harm that is scientifically plausible but uncertain, action shall be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. Morally unacceptable harm, and they talk about several different things, but basically it's imposed without adequate consideration of human rights of those affected. So what we're doing is we're betting the farm. What if Alabama Power is wrong? 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, if they're wrong, we've lost it all. So we don't know exactly what this stuff is going to do long term. So let's take the thing of precaution and move it to a lined landfill. So that would be my ask for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please tell us your name and who, if anyone, you represent, and you please limit your comments to 7 minutes.
All right, no problem with the time.
And if you would like, you can take your mask off.
Oh, thank you, golly. Yeah, I'm Benson O'Connor. hate that we're here, but we're here. I represent me. So I've lived in Mobile my entire life. Grew up sailing, fishing, boating on the bay forever. Still on the bay with my kids now at Sand Island, just playing on the island. And I would like to say first, this venue's horrible. I'm no offense to you guys at all, but this is not a good place for this. I don't really think of this as a public hearing. There's nobody in here with me except for y'all. I don't know if anybody said that, but that's just my feeling. I didn't know it was going to be like this till we got here. So, the closure in place is just a bad idea at this location. It's on one of the most major river systems in the country. It's not a small river. This is not an upland site next to a rocky basin or something. This is a major river system in a swamp. If flooding happens every year, which I know you guys all know that, it happens regardless of whether they have a tropical storm or not. Just we have the bonus of having floods with tropical storms. So there's always a risk the site will be contaminated by those things every year, whether there's a storm or not. The site itself is in groundwater, unlined, as we know. And just downstream, we have the only strategic asset in the entire state, which is the port. And I don't know, I have not heard, I'm sure someone has asked some of these folks what they think might be the result of the catastrophic failure of a closure in place plan, but I don't know that that's happened. It'd be interesting to hear what they have to say about it. It's just too much at risk downstream from this location. Even if you just take the environment out of it entirely, the entire economy of the region depends on the port. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And if you would like, you could go on our website. You can see everybody's comments, and that will be there available for your review.
Appreciate it.
How are you?
Please tell us your name and who, if anyone, you represent.
I'm Ray Mayhall. I represent myself mostly, but I am a past board member of Mobile Gatekeeper. I was born and raised here in Mobile, Alabama. I currently live on Fowl River in South Mobile County. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak with you tonight about Alabama Power's request for a permit for capping coal ash at the Berry plant. You know, you at ADM has a huge responsibility in deciding whether to grant this permit or not. I mean, after all, the Office of Alabama Department of Environmental Management is the regulatory guardian for our environment. You're the ones responsible for approving actions that affect lands, water, air, as well as the citizens of this area and the whole state. As one of these citizens, I implore you not to improve the cap-in-place permit. The current situation at Berry Plant is nothing short of horrible. The presence of toxic metals, especially arsenic and mercury, are polluting the river, the streams, the groundwater, the drinking water, and really possibly our air. According to Alabama Power, coal ash at the Berry plant is already seeping arsenic into the groundwater at levels at over 800% above the legal limit. Of course, you know that since y'all fined them $250,000 for this violation. But the amazing thing is they still do not have a definitive plan to correct the situation. Certainly, capping coal ash that will remain saturated in the groundwater will continue to pollute the groundwater and allow pollutants to migrate into the nearby surface waters. We have real-time evidence of this at Alabama Power's Gadsden plant. As you know, they finished cap-in-place there in the fall of 2018, and in 2019 they continued to find as much as 100 times the national ground after limit for arsenic and 50% above the limit for radium. Cap-in-place is just not safe. Another major reason for not doing cap in place is our weather. Both our normal rainfall as well as hurricanes and tropical depressions and storms. Our rain experience is greater than most all places in the United States. But it's not just our experience. Most of North Alabama's runoff water comes down the river right with it. The likelihood of us having a catastrophic weather experience is very, very high. Such an event that caused serious consequences in Tennessee in 2008. Their dam containing their coal ash ponds failed, and 5.4 million cubic yards of coal ash flowed into the nearby rivers and covered nearly 300 acres. The cleanup took a decade and cost over $1 billion. But what's worse, dozens of the cleanup workers became sick and even some died. Most recently, Hurricanes Florence and Harvey caused severe flooding, shattering river flood records in North Carolina and Texas, causing devastating breaches in their coal pipelines. Think of the likelihood of the hurricanes and tropical storms that we have in our area. Alabama Power's Emergency Action Plan shows that more than 30 square miles of Mobile-Tensas Delta would be covered by coal ash in the event of such a breach caused by this. Is this worth taking the kind of risk to our economy, our people, and the natural resources of Mobile and Baldwin counties with the cap option? Lastly, the cap in place at the Berry plant is not legally viable. It cannot satisfy all the core combustion residual rule requirements. First, the coal ash pond does and would continue to hold water and coal ash because the ash is sitting below the ground level in a depression. Second, it does not remove and eliminate free liquids. And third, it cannot stop liquids from seeping into the ash after capping and prevent the coal ash from leaching, from being released into the ground or the surface water. If it remains or is near the groundwater infiltrates through the sides and the bottom of the unlined pool. So if cap in place doesn't work and it's not a good alternative, what is the alternative? The answer is to remove the coal ash from the site. Sell much of the coal ash and recycle it to things like concrete. Take the remainder to a lined landfill, either by truck or rail. This is a solution being employed in 7 neighborhood states: Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi. The result of these removals is that every unlined coal ash site in the coastal region of the 5 of the 7 states is being removed, and Alabama is the clear exception. So, Alabama Power is not discussing this as an option. It will take more time, but it will not be too much time. It will cost more money, but based on other states' experience, about $12 a year is what it'll cost per customer in Alabama Power. And even that extra expense could be partially covered by selling recycled product to companies like concrete companies. It's really time for Alabama Power to do the right thing and move the ash rather than capping the ash. But more importantly, it's time for you to do the right thing for our environment and our citizens. Please deny this permit request for coal ash cap in place. It is the right thing to do, and it is your responsibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm fine, I hope you are. Please tell us your name and who, if anyone you represent, and if you would like, you can take off your mask. You don't have to.
Okay. My name's Marianne Overton. I live in the Creola Axis area, and I've been there probably over 35 years. More. I was raised in Saraland, so I'm, from the general vicinity. And my sister came, and she provided me with some well water in our area, which looks clean, looks safe to drink, and I appreciate, that it is so nice and clean looking. But there are elements that can get in our water table that you can't see without testing and say this was arsenic. Would you want to drink it then? I wouldn't want to drink it, and I definitely wouldn't want to give it to my children in my home, even with just that little drop of, and this is just eye drops, but if it was arsenic, I wouldn't want to give it to anybody. And, you know, I'm almost 60 years old, and yeah, I've lived a good life and haven't had any major illnesses, but I've had a lot of friends that have had cancer, have had depression, have had different, they have lived on well water in that area. I can't say for a fact that it affected them, but also you can't say that it didn't affect them over the years. And the earth was given to us as a present, a gift, and we should take care of it. Not just for ourselves, but for our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, our children, and we should protect our drinking water because we can't go out and make more drinking water. We've got to protect what's here on this earth. And that's why these coal ash ponds have just been a rising on me for years. And to find out that there's one near me, that upset me. It really hurt. The Alabama Power was allowed to do that to us, and we didn't even know. And it's sad to think that people didn't care about us and that it's unlined. That hurts worse. It hurts. And I just wanted to let y'all know that it does hurt, that, you know, people should be caring about us, but they put an unlined coal ash pond near us. Yeah, and I just wanted to say that. So, and that's just how I feel.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Well, thank you for your time. And don't forget, that's what's going in our water table. Those elements are poison to us from that coal ash. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please tell us your name and if you represent some other organization, and please
Sure.
finish your comments in 7 minutes.
Sure. My name is Sam St. John. Live at 320 Avalon Street here in Mobile. Grew up here in Mobile. Spent all my life on the water. I'm a chemical engineer by degree. Spent a lot of time with different companies, Monsanto, Lockwood Green Engineers, and others. Got into factory automation, information technology. I've been on the board of Mobile Gatekeeper for years, Alabama Coastal Foundation. I'm with the NEP on the Project Implementation Committee, Community Advocacy Committee. I've been involved in the environment for years and years and years. I've spent a lot of time with engineers, geologists, hydrogeologists, talking about the steam plant and the ash pond. Very knowledgeable about it, have written a lot about it, and the bottom line is working with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'm sure y'all are very familiar with them. It is illegal for you guys to allow them to have a permit to cap in place here in Mobile. And the reason for that is the CCR rules that I'm sure you're very familiar with, but just for the purposes of the camera and whatever, I need to say what these rules are. But the CCR rules, starting with 40 CFR 257.102D, 1II, utility can cap in place only if the cap in place design precludes the possibility of future impoundment of water, sediment, or slurry. The proposed cap in place for Barry retains a dam or part of a dam, and we know that. And even in their proposed plan, they talk about a slurry wall, but it's not waterproof. The conductivity of the clay layer below the pit, you know, it's permeable. We already know that. They're already leaching into the groundwater. You've already fined them for it. Then 40 CFR 257.102D2I, free liquids must be eliminated by removing liquid waste or solidifying remaining waste. Well, of course, they're leaving 50% of the ash pond in place, not touching it below groundwater, and it will continue to leach even though they're going to take the other 50% and pile on top. Finally, 40 CFR 257.102D1I, utilities must control, minimize, or eliminate to the maximum extent feasible post-closure infiltration of liquids well, they have no plans to stop the groundwater. They are pumping the slurry water now, just the water on the surface, but that doesn't have anything to do with the groundwater. The groundwater is above the bottom of the pit, so it will stay in there. So therefore, the proposed Berry cap-in-place plan does not appear to satisfy any of the requirements, and it has to satisfy all of them, not just one or two. So again, the plant berry is going to leave half the coal ash in the ground. So ADEM, I mean, you have the responsibility of the citizens of the state of Alabama, especially us coastal citizens, to ensure that, Alabama Power doesn't break the federal law or state law. You know that they're polluting. You've already fined them for polluting. So there's no way you can allow them to leave the coal ash in the groundwater and continue to pollute, because that's still against the law. Their whole concept of natural attenuation, just monitor it for 30 years and it's going to get better. It might get a little better, but it can't go away because they're leaving 50% in the groundwater. Doesn't matter how far it is from the river. It's in the aquifer. It's below the groundwater level. Yeah, you can't measure it in the river because it's slowly, going down the aquifer into the river. But anyway, and then also we know the storms, they're designing for a 500-year flood, which is 22 inches of rain here in Mobile. We've had 1,000-year floods in Houston and all over the southeast in the last 2 years, so we're going to have a lot more rain. I don't say that it has to be trucked all over the country, but we have to put it in line landfills. So if they can find a place on their site to line it, if they can move it across Highway 43 and line, they can buy land up there for nothing. There's just so much they can do, and that other utilities all over the southeast are doing, including Southern Company. I'm a stockholder in Southern Company, been for 35 years. My dividend's going to be the same whether they spend $2 billion, $3 billion, $5 billion. They're already raising, $3 billion so far. They've already raised our rates. They're already collecting the money. So I'm just asking that ADEM have Alabama Power do the right thing for the citizens and for the laws of our country. I mean, I still don't understand how ADEM can allow a permit when they're breaking federal law, I guess because you're not the federal government, right? So I don't know how that really works, how you can allow that. But it is interesting in all their publications and everything that they do, they always say they're allowed to cap in place. They're not allowed to cap in place. I've just stated what the 3 CCR regulations are, that they're not allowed to cap in place because they're in the groundwater with the ash, and that's not what the CCR rule says that they're allowed to do. And so really the only legal thing that you guys can do is, and the only right thing you can do, is to disallow this permit, and then they'll just go back to the drawing board and they'll line, they'll dig pits on site, or they'll put pits somewhere, and line them just like every other utility in the southeast. So it's the right thing to do for the citizens of Alabama. And that's all I've got for you. And I've got a copy if you need it.
Okay, you can certainly leave it with us.
All right.
We'll take it right over here. And we thank you for your comments.
All right, thank you for coming over tonight. If you can get to the Waffle House,
I think we're going to go to a break.
Okay, let's see. It is 8:32. Why don't we take an 8-minute break? Let's try to be back by 8:40.
John, is this ready?
Patrick Crowley. All right, here, come on in and step up to the microphone and tell us your name.
Right here.
And who, if anyone, you represent, and if you would like, you may take off your mask.
Well, thank you. Patrick Crowley. I'm a retired school teacher in Alabama. Enjoying retirement until that hurricane knocked down my giant oak tree. I'm still cleaning it up. I've lived around Mobile for 25, 30 years. I was in Beaumont, Texas. There's the Gulf, the Delta. Now here I live in Spanish Fort, and I drive across the causeway every day and enjoy the birds, the seagulls, the pelicans, and the ones I can't name. The grass is growing. Every now and then I've seen a turtle trying to cross the road, even though they put a little fence up. Extremely concerned with the millions of tons of coal ash. because of all the toxins and the heavy metals that would pollute Mobile River as it's feeding into the Delta. I taught in Bryant High School, which is between Bayou La Battery and Grand Bay, and so half my students were from the farming community and half were from the fishing community. The fishing community would be devastated because the bay shrimp all come from the Delta. And if that is poisoned with the toxic materials, there won't be any. You hardly see white shrimp. Do anybody in here eat shrimp? If you do, I like to get the bay shrimp and sometimes the Gulf shrimp. But there's fewer and fewer bay shrimp available. It's enough with climate change and other pollution from farm runoff. But with the coal ash, because it's so heavy, it would flow down the river and settle to the bottom where the shrimp breed. When you kill the small species, all the larger species suffer. We have bass fishing tournaments that fish in the Delta. That's going to kill our economy on the eastern shore in Mobile because of the pollution. I understand from my brother, when a bass fisherman comes to town with his $45,000, $55,000 boat, he doesn't stay at the Holiday Inn. He stays at the nice hotels and eats at the nice restaurants. So it will affect our economy if it's spilled. The big problem that I've got a headache over is they want to cover the coal ash and specify how they're going to cover it, but they didn't dig the pit, compact 2 feet of predominantly clay soil for the bottom of the pit. That was a law. Then they didn't line the pit. So they're going to cover 21 million tons of coal ash in an unlined pit that is continuously leaking arsenic and no telling what other toxins into Mobile River. I didn't go up Mobile River and get the coal ash. I got charcoal ash. Now this will settle, and it doesn't take but a few minutes to settle. The question is for you, how much of this you put in your aquarium before it settles at the bottom of the aquarium and kills all your fish? I'm not an engineer or chemist. This is probably less than 4 ounces of coal ash, charcoal ash. I don't think the fish in a small aquarium would survive for it to settle. Anybody here think it will settle fast enough for the fish to survive? Nobody has an opinion. That's what I'm worried about. And I'm sure 21 million tons won't leak into the Mobile River when a big hurricane goes up into the Delta, like it almost did with Katrina. If only 10%, okay, 2.5 million tons of coal ash. Now, if you notice how much I poured, this is right here. It's settling. We've got another minute to see if it settles out. But that's what we're looking at if a storm goes up Mobile Bay and hurts that dike. Whether the dike is covered or not. The force of water cannot be underestimated. My dad was a civil engineer in Texas, designed sewage treatment plants, water treatment plants. As a child, going on vacation, he'd say, if we go here just 20 miles out of the way, we can see this fantastic sewage treatment plant. Well, you know, as a 12-year-old kid, I didn't care. But we saw several, some that were fantastic designs. We can't treat it and resolve the chemical problems with the coal ash. We have to remove it. It has to be removed. North Carolina did after how many $1 billion of cleanup? Let's spend the $1 billion to clean it up before the accident happens. Any questions? Some guy from Denmark, engineer, went to New Orleans and showed that they could build a wall like they have in Denmark for about $2 billion. Now, how much damage did the hurricane do to New Orleans area? Was it $4 billion or $5 billion? So for $2 billion, they could have prevented it.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Yes, sir. Oh, I got a mask here.
Okay, good evening. Please tell us your name and who, if anyone, you represent, and you've got 7 minutes to give us your comments.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for having me. I am a wife, a mother of 3 young children, and an Alabama educator. I've been a lifelong Alabamian, and I care greatly about our state, and in particular for the future of Alabama. And I'm here, just like all of you, late on a Tuesday night when my children were waving to me at the door, because I care deeply about what is best, not just a Band-Aid approach, but what is best for Alabama, for its future. And with that being said, I believe that Alabama Power has to move the coal ash to a lined pit away from the waterways, so that we will not be at risk for catastrophic flooding that might happen with hurricanes or the regular flooding that we have. I know that you've heard from numerous experts from both Alabama Power and various environmental organizations. However, I'm just representing the average Alabama citizen who I believe ADEM represents the most, because we are the citizens of Alabama. And I'm excited because we have the solution to this problem. We don't have to do a Band-Aid approach where we just risk the health of our future. We have the answer. And the cap in place on Plant Berry's coal ash pond is not the answer, but is a ticking time bomb waiting to become a disaster many times greater than the BP oil spill, and potentially ruining the lives and livelihoods of millions. Let's be honest, Alabama Power objects to moving the coal ash because they just want the fastest, cheapest way to make basic compliance of the 2015 EPA legislations, and not a reliable, permanent solution that is in the best interest of us all. The basic objections are that it will take too long, it's infeasible to move, and potentially cost more. However, Mobile Baykeeper has found that it will cost $1.4 billion to do the right thing, which is to move the coal ash, versus the $1.2, which has already been put upon us as the customers from Alabama Power to simply do what they've already done, and what they want to do is the cap in place. So it's really not that much of a difference in cost. And I know that you probably have family members that you do not put a cost on their lives, that they are worth what is best, what is going to work for the permanent solution. And that is what I believe as well. I do not believe that leaching toxic metals at any time in the future, as has been said, what will happen, as it has happened in Gadsden, from the 2008 cap in place, with 10,000 times the legal limit of arsenic still being leaked after the cap in place in Gadsden, is acceptable. It's not. And we know it's not. And so we have the answer. I mean, how many times do we have the answer right before us? And all we have to do is take it, and we can change the fate of Alabama forever. And I want to stand here with you tonight and be a partner in doing what is right for our state. The bottom line is, like I said, we have a solution, and we must take the opportunity to save ourselves before it's too late. You and I and every Alabama has too much at stake and is worth too much to put a Band-Aid cap in place on our lives. The cap in place has been proven not to work in Gadsden. It has been proven not to work in the Kingston coal ash spill, which resulted in 11 deaths, $3 billion in damages and cleanup cost, and the 2014 power plant spill with 39,000 tons of coal ash into the Dan River and an estimated cost of $295 million. If we're worried about cost for doing the right thing, $295 million for doing something that doesn't work, obviously, is not saving money. And I just cannot sit here and do a Russian roulette with our lives and the lives of our children, sort of like sticking a cigarette in our baby's mouth, knowing that it's bad for them, but just a little bit of toxin. How long will that take before they get cancer? How long will these toxins that are being leached at 806% above the standards already into our groundwater be allowed? It's already continuing, and if we put a cap in place, that will be even much more worse. You and I love our families, friends, and neighbors, and we value our way of life here. We cherish our American Amazon and the rich, irreplaceable biodiversity and thriving economic resources it provides. Therefore, since we have the best known and proven solution, moving the coal ash to line ponds away from our precious waterways, we must do this. Why would we do otherwise? Why would we want what Alabama suggests to just put a cap in place knowing that it doesn't work and will continue to leak pollutants at an alarming rate? Why would we just hope that that ticking time bomb doesn't explode big time, many times perhaps more than the BP oil spill, and permanently destroying our North American Amazon and slowly causing us and our way of Alabama to die? I am not willing to take that foolish and selfish and lazy risk. My children, my family, and what God has given to all of us to enjoy and benefit from is worth far too much to me. And I believe that it's time for ADEM to support us so that we can move that ash. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out tonight and making your comments. Okay, come on in and tell us your name and who you represent, and if you would like, you may take off your mask to make your comments.
Kind of hot. Fogs up the glasses. My name's Ricky Cornegie, and first I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come here and speak on this issue today. I'm a retired coal miner over 43 years in the coal mines, and also was the mayor of the town of Woodstock for 14 years and a council member for 6 years for a total of 20 years. I currently am Secretary-Treasurer of the Alabama FL-CIO, who I represent today. I'm here today to speak in favor of allowing Alabama Power to seal in place its Plant Berry coal ash site, which is legal in that the EPA has approved two closure methods, either sealing in place or removing and transporting somewhere else. I believe that sealing in place is the most safest method of the two, in that it's estimated it would take at least 200 truckloads per day for the next 15 years to remove and transport it somewhere else. I also believe that Alabama Power has spent years researching the safest way of closing the Plant Berry coal ash site, and I have decided that sealing in place is the safest method. Some would have you believe removing coal ash, other states are removing their coal ash. But I believe that over 60% of the coal ash in the southern states is being closed in place. I would ask that you allow Alabama Power to seal the Plant Berry coal ash site in place, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. I think that was shorter than 7 minutes.
Please tell us your name and who you represent.
Yes, sir. I'm Alan Henry. I'm with the, I'm going to say that in my presentation. Is that okay?
Yes.
First of all, hello, and thank you guys for listening to me tonight. I'll be brief, so I know you're tired. My name is Alan Henry. I am the chairman of the Coosa Alabama River Improvement Association. Until 2018, I was the president of Henry Marine Service, a marine transportation company with towboats and shipyards in the Mobile River. The companies primarily worked as a subcontractor for larger companies, so we had to qualify for a lot of safety and environmental plans, and none was more stringent than Alabama Power's. From 1990 to 2019, my company shifted coal barges in 3 of Alabama Power coal-fired steam plants, Greene County, Berry Steam Plant, and Plant Watson. So since 1990, I've had the pleasure of working with one of the best companies in the country. They put safety and environmental concerns first above and over the production of electricity. I support Alabama Power's permit to seal in place their coal ash ponds because I trust their commitment to safety and to the environment shared by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, here in Suite A tonight, there are no further registered speakers. So please be advised that unless otherwise notified, the public comment period will end at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April the 6th of 2021. All comments must be received at the offices of the department in Montgomery by that time. After consideration of all oral and written comments, the department will make its determinations regarding the proposed permit action and prepare responses to all relevant comments received. Thank you for your participation this afternoon. This hearing is adjourned.